Sarah, and thanks a million again, everybody, for joining us. I think most people probably were here on Monday, but I have a couple of slides that kind of repeat a little bit. So I'll start to share a screen now. So you should see it full screen now. Great, thanks. Yeah, and so thanks again for joining evenings, and thanks to Sarah as well. It's always nice to doing something like this of an evening. So on Monday we covered, I go through the groupings by colours really, browns, blues, skippers, hair streaks, and we did the rarities. And this evening we're going to cover yellows, whites, and kind of garden visitors, more like as they are kind of known as. Let me just minimize this and try and get through. So I've had this slide up the other evening, so I won't spend too much on it. But just ukbutterflies.co.uk. It's good for the flight time by species. It also has in the top line, there's a drop down for similar species, and that came in useful for me there recently, which I'll go into at the end of the talk. And obviously I always like to give a shout out to Insect Channel Islands Facebook page. Really useful and friendly Facebook page that's well worth joining if you are on Facebook. And then another mention for Sue Clark and David Green. Sue Clark, they featured many of the photographs in this evening's presentation, and they have going to have some ID sheets on the Wiltshire Wildlife Trust website soon enough. I haven't logged in today actually, so I don't know when they're going to be on. And then we had this slide, but I added a little bit to it actually, because as Sarah had said at the end of Monday night, you know, we do promote the iRecord app, but obviously there are different species composition, and again across our friends in Guernsey, and there again across in Alderney. So for example, the UK has the ringlet and we don't. We've got kind of long-tailed blue appearing more and more regularly. It's still like a big deal when they appear over there. So there is that to consider. And most of the species that we cover, you know, we have a few records. We obviously have more records of butterflies, but I'm not going into all of the species. And I'll talk about any of the slides again. If I do have pictures of male and females looking different, I'll show that. So we'll go on to the next one. So brimstone, we started with this as this is one of those that emerges quite early. It is also one of the ones that, the reason being that they emerge so early is because they are one of the few that overwinter as an adult, as a butterfly. Other species that we'll be covering tonight are peacock, red admiral, small tortoiseshell, comma. So they spend the winter in their adult form, as I said, and they tuck away themselves in outbuildings, crevices, bunkers, obviously, which we have a lot of here, log piles, or evergreen vegetation such as ivy, and they'll spend like the coldest days in a more dormant state. So they have this characteristic. Let's see if my mouse is working. I can't see anyone. Hang on. So hopefully you can see my mouse there. Oh, thank you, Sarah. So this is what's characteristic of a brimstone, but obviously you'll only see it when it lands. The males are more yellow than the females, and the females are more akin to a other white species, kind of known as the cabbage whites, is their own official name, but they often do settle with their wings closed. The numbers are low in Jersey, and this may be due to the lack of the larval food plant, which is buckthorn or alder buckthorn. So it may be that those that we see are ones that come over from plants. But I'm not quite sure on that, but it's just kind of, it's a thing to kind of worth keep in mind or look into. But maybe some of you know where there is some buckthorn or alder buckthorn. I'll be honest, I don't know what that is, really, what it looks like to me. Yeah, and they have one brood in the year. So that's brimstone then. And next is our clouded yellow. Again, this is another one that settles with its wings closed. The male and the female are similar in colour. You rarely see the upper side of the wings. Obviously, we've got the underside there. You rarely see the upper side, which is more orangey yellow with black edges. And It can be confused with other species in flight, but experts are able to see the darker colouring, so that flash of the kind of its black edges really. And I suppose that just takes practice really. I don't think, seen a clouded yellow or a brimstone myself, so hoping to sometime if I get out early enough in the spring. They can have up to 3 broods, so they're seen from March to October. Just a note on broods, so this is not like a single female butterfly laying several sets of eggs. So the adults that mated to bring about an egg have generally died by the time the egg hatches out of the caterpillar. So a brood means it's the life cycle goes through, and you can have 3 life cycles in a year if the weather is good for the clouded yellow. However, though, they are a migrant, so they're usually unable to survive in UK winters. Obviously, this might be different for Jersey and Guernsey. And they are also able to cross large expanses of water. I was reading the Peter Eel's book again, which was the book with a very colourful cover, with the White Admiral, I believe it was. You can have clouded yellow years. So in his book, he references back to a Reverend Harrison, who in 1868 could see a large yellow patch out at sea, and then realised it was thousands of clouded yellows flying near to the sea, and they were rising and falling. It's a lovely description in the book, rising and falling with the waves, and then they flew around him where he stood on the cliff top, and then settled down on flowers or carried on. And then the book also tells of another person seeing the reverse migration. This was in 1947, again with an estimate like 100,000 clouded yellow butterflies. Imagine 100,000. It would be just so amazing to see. They were flying back to France. I think they were on the boat from Dover over, and that was in October. And how amazing to see. And imagine Facebook and social media just lighting up with that. So that, it's just kind of, I thought it was interesting to bring in. And then the large white. So large white and small white, and sometimes probably green veins are thrown in there as well, are also known as the cabbage white. So if you're really into your allotment or your garden, you might not, and your brassicas, you might not be such a fan of these lads. However, you can pick them off with the leaf that they're on and gently put them away. I may have tried such a thing. There are things, and obviously a lot of people now net whatever they're trying to grow. And my friend leaves a little bit out for the butterflies always. He likes to share. That's good. So the female has 2 spots on the upper side of the forewings, and this is the 2 spots are absent in the male. Now I don't have, unfortunately, I couldn't share some pictures I didn't have access to. I'll talk about that in resources that you can use in a few slides' time. So the underneath of the wings, which we can see here in this picture, is the same in both sexes. And it is generally slightly larger than the small white. However, there can always be exceptions to the rules. I kind of think it has a more floppy flight, if you want, compared to the small white, which it seems to be more fluttery. However, they don't really use this as a way to indicate, but you do get your eye in, and it does take practice. So it's just getting out there and seeing, and then you might think it's something, you try and get close, you get that picture, you go back and you look at it, and that's really how you start to learn the difference between a large and a small white, and things like that. And same for a lot of similar sort of species. So then we will go on to the small whites. So yeah, go back and forth. They do look very similar. So again, this is another AKA cabbage white. The spots on the wings are in both the male and the female. The small white, just to note, is not as destructive to brassicas as the large white, but it can be still seen as a pest to some. The underwings are the same, yeah, as I said. So again, you're not going to get much from looking at the underwing to know the difference between the species, or to know the difference between the sexes if you were looking into that. They are both resident and migrant. They can do reverse migration. They have 2 broods per year. They lay The difference being actually with the small white, they lay their eggs singly, I believe. The large white lay eggs in batches. And then the time of flight is very similar for both species. So they are very similar in many ways to the large white. But again, it's practice and just learning, and then suddenly get confident in it. The green-veined white, obviously this can be mistaken for small white, especially in flight. However, when rested like this, showing the underwings, you've got this venation. And this is actually, it's not actually green as the name suggests, but it's a combination of yellow and black and grey scales on the wings. And actually the lower one can actually look quite yellowy in the spring. The underneath is the same for both male and female. They do have spots on the upper side of the forewings. The male has one or no spot, and the female has two. Now these apparently like warm, sheltered, humid conditions, so they favour damp areas, but they can be found in drier areas, obviously, searching for food and things like that. And then we move on to the orange tip. So orange tips are fairly rare in Jersey. They're only known at a few sites. I've never seen one. Trying to get out and see one sometime. They are one of the earliest whites to appear right now, apparently, and they emerge as butterflies from overwintering pupa. So the pupa manages to survive our winters. Only the males have orange tips, and then they have this marbled colour on the underside. And this is down to yellow and black scales on the wings, creating a greenish colour. This marble effect acts as great camouflage, and as stated in the Peter Eel's book, especially when it's rests with wings closed on cuckoo flower or garlic mustard or cow parsley, they really blend in there apparently. So just on comparing whites, as I said, practice jumps out there. So another one, so if I had pictures that I could share with the wings, so this is the large white here, whenever I choose photos, and see how it comes down, this black goes further down the wing to the end of the wing there. On the small white, it ends it further up. And if you were to see the green veined white, it's hard to describe, but it has, it kind of follows the vein. The black will be less, but it will follow the vein. So a good way to look is if you just search for the words how to identify white butterflies on either Scottish Wildlife Trust or Butterfly Conservation. I'm sure it'll be in the similar species stuff on the UK Butterflies website as well. And that's a good way to just kind of get familiar with it. And then you take that knowledge outside and then photograph if you can. I mean, most of us are lucky now to have a smartphone or a digital camera. And it can prove useful, as you'll see at a later slide as well. Then we'll move on to the more garden varieties of butterflies now. And we have here the peacock. And I start with the peacock because if you're lucky enough to have been out over the last few sunny days in some part of sunny sheltered spot, you might be lucky enough to see a peacock. Again, I saw a few today as I was walking to the school, and got my friend interested in it as well, and she's taking photographs, and I've been on to her about high records, so we could have more records coming in hopefully. So these overwinter again. So the underside of the wings are a very dark brown. I didn't include a picture of that because I just, there's something about peacocks, when they're photographed, they almost look like they're photoshopped. Like it really just stands out in the edging of it. It's just such a beautiful one to photograph. So yeah, the dark brown, that helps on the underside, sorry, that helps with the camouflaging. Again, in bunkers, I've seen them in bunkers myself, in trees and things like that. And then it has obviously these 4 eye spots, which are a deterrent for bird predators, and mice apparently as well. Another thing that they have, so they can camouflage, they can scare off predators. They can also scare off predators by making a loud hissing sound by rubbing its wings together. And apparently it's loud enough for us to hear. But I didn't know that. I thought that was quite cool. And I just wanted to highlight this picture down here of the caterpillars. And some of you may have seen this on nettles. It is quite a sight to see. And it's just goes to show how beneficial it is to leave aside an area of your garden if you're lucky enough to have one for nettles, grasses, and thistles to grow, because these are all beneficial to butterflies, but and also other wildlife. So they're found in most habitats in Jersey. They're known as nomad, and the brood for the next year, the adults that emerge in like between July and September will be the ones that overwinter. So they'll be out stocking up on food and that. On to then another really striking one is the red admiral. The males and the females are the same. The female slightly bigger apparently, but I know the size isn't a thing we can easily see with butterflies. They are both resident and migrant. So research has been done into them overwintering as butterflies and eggs. There's a lot of research that goes on to seeing, how butterflies are managing to overwinter, and a lot of people looking at the effects of climate change and that. So it's quite an interesting area. And they do migrate. I think it's a couple of times. There'll be several migrations in from Europe to the UK, and obviously that will happen for the Channel Islands as well. They're found in every habitat, and I read as well that there are even records from Iceland. So, that's quite impressive, really. And then, so that's our red admiral, which is quite common. And then we have some sightings, although it is rare, of a white admiral. So again, I've never seen these. These are excellent pictures. And apparently these really glide along when they fly. The underside, you could just about see it in this photograph, but on the front cover of the book and other photographs I've seen, it's like a russety orange color, and some describe it as quite beautiful. They have a single brood and they favor oak woodlands apparently. The caterpillar is also really striking and has really spiny protrusions. Again, that's featured on the front cover of that book, but yeah, quite an impressive species. Then the painted ladies. This is one of my faves, just mainly because it's just so awesome and how it is a migrant, basically. I can't say specifically for Jersey, but painted ladies seen in the UK come from North Africa and Arabia directly, and from Europe indirectly, which means they have gone to Europe, bred, and then continued their migration further north to UK and Ireland. And it's known that they fly at great heights, 200 meters to 400 meters, and can be found up to 1,200 meters altitude. They sometimes fly at night as well, and they also do a reverse migration back south come autumn time. And it completes its life cycle in about 6 weeks. So yeah, it's just such an impressive butterfly, really. And so sometimes when you see them, it can look a little tatty. And you can also, like I spoke earlier about clouded yellow years, you can have painted lady years. And what people just, the media goes mad for that. I know there was one in 2009. I think there was one a bit more recently as well. I forget what year. But yeah, it's a talking point, really. Then the comma. So this can appear similar to the small tortoiseshell or the Queen of Spain fritillary, which is quite rare, which are covered on Monday. But the main distinctive thing is this jagged edged wing. And obviously in a silhouette or in highlighted on the closed wing, it really pops there as well. This is to help with camouflage to make it look like a leaf. The male and females do look alike. So it gets its name from this white line, white curve there that looks like a comma in writing. It's a woodland species until about late summer, apparently, where it moves out into gardens and parks to feed, build up fat reserves for overwintering as an adult. The numbers are doing well in the UK and Ireland, which is quite a good news thing to hear. I think it did decline in the past, but it's doing well now. So the map is quite rare. And what's really unusual about this is that it has different colours from its spring and summer broods. Obviously, they were thought as two different species originally, but research has shown that there on the right, the darker one is the summer brood, and the spring is the orangey one. The summer brood, it looks like the white admiral, as I said. but they are smaller. So that, yeah, so it's smaller than what that white admiral. The white admiral is large like a red admiral would be, but this one is a fair bit smaller. Again, haven't seen it, so I can't describe it that well. Small tortoiseshell. So the small tortoiseshell is a dark underside for camouflage. I didn't have a picture of that, but it's just a very browny, would definitely camouflage quite well against a tree, etc. It lives in a variety of habitats. Numbers are showing decline, unsure as to why. We don't in Jersey count enough small tortoiseshells on our transects to be able to understand the trend over time. You need to count quite a lot of them to be able to understand that. Such as like for a large white, we'd have a lot of records of that. But we will have resident and migrants from France most likely. And then we do have large tortoiseshells, and what I wanted to show and then move on, I've talked about using pictures. So they can be quite difficult, as I know firsthand there recently, to tell apart. But if I think I did put a circle around it. Yeah. So it's this spot here that I found for me was a defining feature. There are other things to do with the white along here. It's along the same way. There's less blue apparently to see, but again, that could change depending on it being an overwintering adult or not. So you might think, why is she showing us this rubbish picture? Because this is one of my rubbish pictures that I took last week, I think, was it, in St. Catherine's. I was there with a volunteer showing the route, and we were unsure, obviously, if it was a large or a small tortoiseshell. And then I was able to, you zoom in on your camera and you get it better. So it's not a great photograph, but it gives me that defining spot that I circled in blue. My arrows don't really point to it, but it's this second spot here. And that's what it gave me. Now, my friend who had the volunteer, she put it on and everybody said, yeah, it's a large tortoiseshell, but I wasn't getting the feedback as to how they knew, And then it wasn't until I looked at UK Butterfly's website, and that was a key thing that showed in their similar species page that showed it to be. So that was great for me, a great learning thing. But why I wanted to show this is the real great use of using photographs for ID purposes. No matter how bad your image is, you're going to get something from it. And I was really glad to have that. So I think actually that's it now for the butterfly ID. So I'm just going to go over the Jersey Butterfly Monitoring Scheme. I won't spend too much on this because I think most of you actually were here on Monday. But volunteers are set a route once a week. So we have certain routes that we need walked. From April to September, we do provide cover, obviously, walking 26 weeks. Some managed to do it, and I think they're amazing. But we do provide cover as well. How to get involved, look up Wildlife Jersey there on gov.je, or email us Wildlife Jersey, or get in touch with Sarah or myself, and we'll look after you. And then casual records, obviously Jersey Biodiversity Centre, where Sarah is based. Create a login, just use your email address and you set up a password. It's really straightforward, and then you can put all your records in there. And it's nice because that's a good way to keep all your records in one place. And then the butterfly recording app, as I talked about before, and these records go through to JBC. Now, I did say I was going to talk a little bit about, we're doing graph time, fit counts. So this is a flower insect time count. And the reason I want to talk about this briefly, I won't go on about it too much. I did a presentation on it last year. I'm not sure if that ever went up anywhere. I'm not too bothered if it didn't, so don't worry, Sarah.
I think it's on our YouTube channel.
Oh, it is on the JBC YouTube channel. Oh, right, grand. So yeah, so it's there. So I won't spend too much time, but I did just want to kind of show how, because we're trying to encourage our butterfly volunteers who are doing surveys to do a 10-minute survey on a flower. So the flower types there's like thistles, bramble, lavender, hogweed, knapweed, ragwort, which you see in the picture there, buddleia, heather, thistle, ivy, buttercup, dandelion, hawthorn, bramble, I think I said, So you pick one of those target flowers. You can also do another flower. You'd have to write in the form what flower that you chose. You put your quadrat, which is 50 centimeters squared, so it's only a small square. I made mine out of wool, bright colours of wool, so they come out against vegetation. And you stand or you sit there for 10 minutes and you let nature come to you. And it is just a lovely way to survey. I like doing surveys like that. I used to survey hen harriers that way in County Cork, and it's just a nice way to sit and let nature come and see all sorts of things as well, don't you? So it's really straightforward. There's a form, a paper form to fill out, and then the online form on the pollinator monitoring website, which I think we have a link to in JDC. We definitely do on gov.je anyway. The online form where you then enter your data to iRecord is the same format as the paper form. So it's really, really straightforward. If you want to know more about it, you can do that. So I was going to get somebody in to talk about the insect groupings, because what I didn't say is that you don't have to know what type of fly it is, what type of butterfly even it is. You don't have to know what type of beetle it is. You just have to know the groupings. So I thought I'd say this. Now, we found out I can't play it that way, so I'll have to stop share and reshare. It's an 8-minute video, so we thought we'd watch that. It has music. Feel free to mute the music if you want. I quite like it. But it does change tone when the wasp group comes up. That's quite funny, I found. It's like, da, 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 wasp. Not quite that dramatic, okay. So I'll stop sharing. I'll share that one. And then I'll reshare a different one. Okay, and I'm going to try and just turn down my sound in case that makes anyone else's sound go a bit much. Okay.
Yeah, the music's not too overpowering.
Okay. Okay, I'll just double check that another YouTube video I'm going to start up. You know how it goes.
If Denny, if you keep your sound on, we'll be able to hear the music.
Sorry, just a second, Sarah. All seems to be just going a bit. Can you guys hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. So I hope that was a bit useful. It's better than anything I can put together. I'll just share screen again, back to the thank you slide. And if you are interested in fit counts, then yeah, please let me know if you want any help, or you can go straight to the resources on the CEH website that I've linked there and look up. I mean, everything that you need is there really, but if you want a hand or a chat about it, feel free to get in contact. And the data goes to iRecord, which then comes to us through the Biodiversity Centre. So that's how that one works. So that is really it. I'm moving on. Oh, I to go a little.
Can I just add something, Denny?
Yeah.
So the fit counts, they come with a really big guide online. I know in the video it said print it out and take it with you. I would probably advise against that, printing it out, because it is a massive guide. But what we have done is we've got on the pollinator project website, there is a simpler ID sheet that fits on an A4 piece of paper rather than it being a book that you're printing off. And that's a lot more manageable to kind of take out on a site with you, or even just to have on your phone. But the one that the fit counts have produced, their kind of bigger book, is really useful to go through online. It's got some great kind of comparisons between like the hoverflies and the wasps and bees and honeybees. I found it really useful when I was starting off last year, so definitely check it out, but I would advise not to print it out.
That's a good point, yes. Yeah, we have those resources on the government, the gov.je web page as well, I believe. Yeah, it's time to kind of start looking at all those things. When I do my transect, I stop for the 10 minutes, either towards the end or somewhere in the middle. And yeah, it's a nice thing to do. But yeah, good point, Sarah, definitely about the printing. So yeah, I just want to say thanks to all the butterfly volunteers for supplying photographs. Thanks to Sue Clark and David Green for the majority of the photographs in this. Thanks to Nadine Michunas, who works at CEH, who created that video that we watched. She gave permission for us to show. And she's created, there are a few other videos on there that she's created. And thank you all for listening and your time. And if there's any questions, yep, please feel free to ask in the chat. I must have a quick look in the chat as well.
We've got a question about how many butterfly monitors do you have?
I haven't counted this year actually yet. We have about, I would say, in and around 30. Some, you know, each year it changes. Some can do it, some can't. But yeah, it's around that. We have, I think it's 30. Well, it was 43, but at least 3 of them are gone now. There's about 37 transects that need to be walked. So that's, you know, we are still looking for volunteers, basically, if that's what the question was wondering. If you'd like to know more, feel free to email Wildlife Jersey and that'll be grand. What I didn't say, but I'm not sure if most people are doing a transect, is a lovely feeling of ownership. I talked about it on Monday night as well. You know, it's that sense of you really get to know the site, you get to know it during the seasons, you get to know what to expect almost to see butterflies. So it is, anyone who takes it up, I really enjoys it. You know, they only give it up if they have to, essentially. So it's a really great thing to get involved. And I'm not just saying that.
Jeannie, your hand up.
Yeah, I'd be polite and put my hand up.
Well, thank
A
you.
quick question is, if we, Demi, I know we talked about potentially putting a transect in at the Grow project, but I'm interested to know what's the time frame, when do you start monitoring and when do you end? So it's 20, did you say how many weeks? 26?
Yeah, so
Okay.
the official start is tomorrow.
Okay.
So the calendar runs from the 1st of April till the end of September. But we do, obviously, I think people have been out this week. I tried to get out this week because the weather was so good, and that would be week 0. We don't always say you have to get out. On week, there even goes -1, -2,
Yeah.
you know, for the earlier weeks in March. But yeah, officially, it's tomorrow is the starting date. We can miss weeks. The stats behind it all allows for missing weeks. So we've kind of done a late kind of recruitment drive this year, but it was kind of a timing thing. So, you know, if anyone is interested in getting involved, then there's definitely still scope to get into it now. And covering is another good way. Well, we've kind of got cover source this year, but you know, there's lots sharing a transect is another way of doing things and learning you know, with your own pace. So yeah.
So we're about to, obviously in the next 2 weeks, we'll only be planting our pollinator patches then. So does that mean we're too late to set up a transect for this year, because you won't have that data for the first sort of, until those pollinators come through, the flowers?
No, I mean, if you want to, if we want to chat about it tomorrow, we can, but you could definitely set up, because obviously you pretty much know where you're planting at the moment. So, you know, if you wanted to do zigzag across, which has happened with fields, or up and down, you know, we can sort that out, but it's not too late, no.
Perfect, thank you.
Danny, if you wanted to share a transect with somebody, would we have to, as one of your volunteers, could we find somebody to walk it with, or is there a way that, you know, you can kind of help us find somebody to share it with?
Yeah, well, I have tried finding, like, matching somebody up, and that has been proved to be more difficult than I thought it would be. So I've shared my personal one that I do on my own time with somebody, and that's working well for me. So it just depends. I might do a shout out again to volunteers and saying if anybody wants to share. But yeah, if you come as a pair, that's probably going to work a little bit better.
And when you say share, is that you both walk the transect at the same time, or you do that alternative weeks in that 26th week?
Yeah, it's not walking the same time, because they say it should be one set of eyes, one person recording. So you know, when I walk with my son, he sees loads that I don't see. I can't mark it down. But you know, you could walk it with a friend, and you know, it's only one of the spotting. But generally, however people want to share it as alternative weeks, you know, however they want to set that up, that's fine.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think there was a good, people are seeing butterflies I saw in the chat. Andy was saying yes. I think that was with the clouded yellow. Yeah, a very rare pale clouded yellow. Exactly that. There is that. I don't like to go into too many of the anomalies. I can't even say that word. And differences. But yeah, that's correct. And there are ways to identify them as well. And large black wings corner looks like a boomerang. That's a good one. Some say they see it as an L, although I see it as longer than an L. But yeah, I think boomerang is a better way to describe it, actually. I remember that one. People saw peacock. Did I see somebody say something? An orange tip. Oh, you had an orange tip, Caroline. Excellent. Oh, well, you help me see a swallowtail, so maybe you'll help me see an orange tip sometime. I don't know if there's any other questions, maybe.
I have one more, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the butterfly map, is that right? Is it known by another name? Because I'm just looking through this very old book of butterflies, but I can't find it in here.
Might be a European map, but it might not be in the book, depending on where that covers, because
yeah, it's just Britain. So yeah.
I don't think it's actually in in this one, I have.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's not. No. Okay, I'm getting a no there as well from other experts. I always like to say, and I probably didn't say, I'm not the expert in all of this. Oh, and Richard's got his. Oh, look, we're all showing off our books.
Cool. Cool.
Richard, if Richard's muted, sorry. You need to turn your sound on, Richard. The bottom down the bottom.
Yeah. Edit.
There you go.
Is the book reversed? Because I think I've got a reversed image.
No, that we can see that butterflies
Okay.
are Britain's in Europe.
That's got everything, the map, everything.
Perfect.
It's a good one to have.
Nice stuff.
It's not the type of thing you carry in your back pocket, but it's nevertheless it's a good one. So is the little one by Richard Lewington. I don't think the map's in there either.
I think that's good for comparing species
Yeah.
as well, the latest version. Yeah.
But if you want just one and you want everything in Europe and Britain, that's probably it.
Yeah,
Okay.
good stuff. Thank you for that, Richard.
Well,
Yeah, obviously, because being so close to France, we have that crossover as well. So what Richard was saying there is quite valid, really. I was missing quite a few of the species that we see in this, and went to butterfly conservation. But I mean, I am loving this book, I must say. Yeah. Yeah, if that's everything then. Thank you all, and yeah, it was great to have so many interested people.
Thank you,
Thank
Denise,
you.
for the time.
Thank you.
And get in touch if you want to find out more. Yeah, thanks a million.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Bye. Bye.
Denny,
Hello,
when can,
Caroline.